My parents laughed when I started my own business. Now they're demanding I hire my brother. There was a time when I was nothing more than a punchline at the dinner table. Every family gathering, every phone call, every casual conversation was laced with thinly veiled mockery, with condescending smirks and dismissive chuckles. It didn't matter that I was pouring every ounce of my energy into something I believed in. It didn't matter that I worked tirelessly, sacrificing sleep, friendships, and a social life to build something from nothing, because in their eyes, I wasn't doing anything of value. A business? My father had scoffed when I first told them my plan. That's cute, but when are you going to get a real job? My mother, ever the enabler of his derision, had simply laughed along, shaking her head. You're wasting your time, sweetheart. Just go back to school, get a degree in something practical. We don't have time for silly little dreams. And then there was my brother, the golden child, the favorite, the untouchable prince of the family. Where I was ignored, he was praised. Where I was doubted, he was blindly supported. When he got his first corporate job right out of college, my parents had practically thrown a parade in his honor. They gushed about how proud they were, how he was destined for greatness, how he was the true success of the family. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment, the dreamer, the one who would never amount to anything. I remember those years with a clarity that burns, the endless struggle, the late nights, the fear that maybe, just maybe, they were right about me. There were days when I was drowning in self-doubt, where I second-guessed every decision, where failure loomed like a storm cloud, ready to consume everything I had built. But I never stopped. I worked in silence. I bled for my business. I fought for every client, every sale, every inch of progress. And while they dismissed me, while they looked down on me with amused smiles, I was laying the foundation of something greater than any of them could have imagined. Then, the tides shifted. The business that they had ridiculed, the hobby they had mocked, exploded into something unstoppable. Clients poured in. Revenue surged. What started as a desperate gamble became an undeniable success, and suddenly, the family that had ignored me for years started to take notice. Suddenly, they wanted in. The first sign of their newfound interest came in subtle ways. My mother, who had once dismissed my work as a waste of time, suddenly called me more often. Her tone was softer, sweeter, lined with curiosity rather than condescension. "How's work, sweetheart? You must be so busy these days." My father, who had barely acknowledged my efforts before, now spoke of me with a strange kind of forced admiration. "I always knew you had potential," he had said one night at dinner, conveniently forgetting the years of scorn. "Took you a while, but you finally made something of yourself." And then, there was my brother, the man who had basked in our parents' adoration while I was left to prove myself over and over again. The one who had always been their pride, their golden boy, their unshakable success story. Only things weren't looking so golden for him anymore. He had lost his job. The company that had once held him in such high regard had cut him loose without hesitation. And now, with no prospects, no backup plan, and no experience outside the cushy corporate structure he had relied on, he was floundering, which, of course, meant my parents turned to me. The phone call came late one evening, my mother's voice brimming with exaggerated concern. "Honey, your brother is struggling right now. He's had a tough time and he needs a fresh start. We were thinking, maybe you could help him." I knew where this was going before she even finished. "You have such a successful business now and he's always been so good with numbers. Why not bring him on board? Give him a job. You know, help him out the way family is supposed to." Family. That word, suddenly so important, when it had meant nothing when I was the one struggling. I let the silence stretch between us. Let the weight of her request settle. She thought this would be easy. She thought I would fold, that I would fall in line like I always had, that I would let go of the years of neglect and open my doors to the same man who had never lifted a finger for me. "You want me to hire him?" I repeated, my voice eerily calm. "Yes, sweetheart. He just needs a chance." I almost laughed. A chance. The same chance I had begged for. The same support I had been denied when I was clawing my way through the dirt, scraping together every bit of strength just to survive. But now that he was the one struggling, Now that the golden child had fallen, they expected me to be the safety net. I took a slow breath, my fingers tightening around my phone. No. Silence. I could hear the sharp intake of my mother's breath, the sheer disbelief. No? She echoed, as if the word was foreign to her. That's right, I said, my voice firm. I won't do it. The shift was immediate. The sweetness in her tone curdled into something sharper, something colder. But he's your brother. Was he my brother when you laughed at me? I asked, my voice unwavering. Was he my brother when he stood by while you belittled me? When I needed support, when I needed encouragement? Where was he? Where were any of you? She stammered, struggling for a response, but I wasn't finished. You called my business a joke. You treated me like I was nothing. And now that I've built something successful, you think you can waltz in and demand a piece of it? I let out a hollow laugh. That's not how this works. Her voice cracked. We're family, honey. We need to help each other. No, Mom, I said, my voice steely. I did this without you. I don't owe you anything. And with that, I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they would finally see that I wasn't their backup plan, their safety net, their second choice after their golden boy had failed. But I underestimated them, because days later a truth emerged, one I had never expected. A relative, an aunt who had always watched from the sidelines, called me in confidence. You know why they never supported you, right? She said softly. I frowned. Because they didn't believe in me. No, she said, her voice heavy. Because they were afraid you'd outshine him. The words hit like a hammer. What? Your parents always knew you were capable, but they didn't want you to be better than him. They needed him to be the successful one. You were never supposed to win. I couldn't breathe. All those years, all that doubt. And it had never been about my failures. It had been about protecting his image. They had chosen him over me before I had even begun. And now, when I had finally proven them wrong, they expected me to save him? No, this time, I wouldn't be their safety net. This time, I would let them fall. It was strange how clarity could feel like both a relief and a burden. The revelation from my aunt had settled into my bones like a poison, slow and insidious, infecting every memory I had of my family, every dismissive word, every undermining remark, every moment they had treated me like a failure before I had even started. It all made sense now. It had never been about me being incapable. It had never been about them genuinely thinking I would fail. It had always been about him, my brother, the golden child, the one they had built their entire sense of pride around, the one they had carefully nurtured into their perfect image of success. I was never supposed to surpass him. My role had been assigned from the start. I was meant to stay beneath him, to be the lesser one, the one who never quite measured up. But I had rewritten the script, and now they didn't know how to handle it. I sat in my office, the city lights sprawling beneath me through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The success I had built, the empire they had once mocked, was now undeniable. I had fought for every bit of it, had bled for it, had suffered for it, and now they wanted to reap the benefits without ever having invested in me. I had ignored my mother's calls since our last conversation. Her messages had grown more frantic, shifting between guilt-tripping and outright anger. This isn't how family treats each other. I raised you better than this. You think you're better than us now? It was almost amusing, the audacity of it. But it wasn't just her anymore. Now, my father had entered the arena. I sat back in my chair, rubbing my temple as I stared at the latest text message on my phone. Dad, you need to stop being selfish. He's your brother. He helped you growing up, and now it's your turn to help him. I exhaled sharply through my nose. Helped me? Was that the new version of history they had decided on? I let my fingers hover over the keyboard before I finally typed back. Me. Tell me exactly how he helped me. I'll wait. Minutes passed. Then an hour. I was nearly done wrapping up my work for the night when my phone vibrated again. Dad, that's not the point. The point is that we're family, and when someone is down, we lift them up. He would do the same for you. I stared at the message, a dry laugh escaping my lips. Would he? Would my brother, the one who had spent his life looking down on me, the one who had joined in every time our parents had belittled my choices, have lifted me up if the roles were reversed? No. He would have watched me drown, and maybe, just maybe, he would have laughed about it. The next day they showed up unannounced. I had barely stepped into my office when my assistant knocked, her expression hesitant. "Your parents are here," she said, her voice careful. "They didn't have an appointment, but they're insisting." Of course they were. I sighed, debating whether I should send them away or deal with them now. Letting them in meant subjecting myself to whatever guilt-ridden monologue they had prepared. But denying them? That would only fuel their self-righteous victim narrative. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my chin in thought before finally nodding. "Send them in." The door opened, and in they walked. My mother leading the charge, my father close behind, both dressed as if this were some kind of formal negotiation, rather than a desperate attempt to strong-arm me into submission. "Sweetheart," my mother started, her tone dripping with forced warmth. "We were in the area and thought we'd drop by." I arched an eyebrow. "In the area?" My father cleared his throat. "Look, let's not play games. We need to talk." I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. "Then, talk." They sat, my mother adjusting her purse on her lap, my father lacing his fingers together like he was preparing for some kind of business deal. "It's about your brother," my mother finally said, as if that wasn't already obvious. I said nothing, just stared at them, waiting. "He's been struggling," she continued. "Losing his job was hard on him. You know how the job market is right now." I tilted my head. Didn't seem so hard when I was struggling. Her expression flickered, but she pushed on. "We just think that if you brought him into your company, it would be good for both of you." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. "Explain to me exactly why it would be good for me." My father exhaled through his nose, clearly irritated. "Because he's your family. Because this business should be about more than just money. It should be about helping those closest to you." I let out a slow breath, tapping my fingers against the wood. He didn't build this company. He didn't put in the years of work. He didn't suffer through the failures and setbacks. So tell me, what exactly entitles him to a piece of something he never contributed to? They exchanged a glance, my mother's lips thinning. "Honey," she said carefully, "we're not saying he deserves a free ride." "Aren't you?" I countered. "Because that's exactly what this sounds like." My father's patience was visibly thinning. "This attitude of yours, it's ugly. You're letting success get to your head." I laughed, shaking my head. "You think I don't remember? You think I don't remember every time you dismissed me? Every time you looked down on me, acted like I was wasting my life? And now that I've built something worthwhile, you suddenly care about family values?" My mother placed a hand over her chest, looking as if I had wounded her. "We were just trying to push you to be better." "No," I interrupted, my voice cold. "You were trying to keep me beneath him. And now that he's fallen, you expect me to carry him?" "No," her eyes flashed. "You owe him—" I stood abruptly, making both of them flinch. "I don't owe him a damn thing." Silence filled the office, thick and suffocating. They weren't used to this. They weren't used to me saying no. They had spent my entire life treating me like an afterthought, and now that I held the power, they were realizing, far too late, that the rules had changed. "I worked for this," I said quietly, my voice firm. "I built this, and I will not let you guilt me into handing him something he didn't earn." My mother's expression twisted, her carefully crafted mask cracking. "So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on us?" I met her gaze without hesitation. "No, I'm just finally treating you the way you treated me." She inhaled sharply, shaking her head in disbelief. My father stood, his jaw clenched. "You're making a mistake." I crossed my arms. "No, I made a mistake when I spent years trying to earn your respect. But I don't need it anymore." I watched as the reality settled into them, as the understanding that they had lost control hit them fully. Without another word, they turned and left, and as the door clicked shut behind them, I exhaled, feeling something lift off my shoulders. The silence after they left was thick, pressing in on me like an unseen force. My office, usually a space of control and focus, felt momentarily unsettled as if ghosts from my past had just walked through, stirring up memories I had long since buried. I had known this moment would come. I had spent years preparing for it, imagining all the ways they would eventually crawl back, disguising their entitlement as family loyalty. But even knowing it, even expecting it, didn't erase the bitter taste it left in my mouth. They had walked out with their heads high, with the illusion that they still had some semblance of power, but I knew better. They were running out of options. And soon enough, the last remaining piece of their grand scheme, my brother, would make his move. I didn't have to wait long. It came 3 days later. My phone buzzed in the middle of a meeting. I glanced at the screen, my brother's name flashing across it like a beacon of inevitability. I let it ring. He called again. And again. By the 4th attempt, I sighed, excused myself from the meeting, and stepped onto my office balcony. The city stretched out below me, glittering with life, a testament to how far I had come. I finally answered. "Wow," I said dryly. "Calling me directly? I'm honored." A pause, then a forced chuckle. "Come on, man. Don't be like that." I said nothing, waiting. He sighed. "Mom and Dad said you weren't exactly open to the idea of helping me out. That's one way to put it. They don't get it, you know," he continued, his tone shifting into something more casual, like we were two old friends catching up. "They're old-fashioned. They think things work the way they used to. But you and me, we know better. We know how the game is played." I leaned against the railing, watching cars weave through the streets below. "And what game is that?" "The game where we look out for each other," he said smoothly. "I mean, come on. We're brothers. We've always had each other's backs." A slow smile curved my lips, cold and sharp. "Have we?" There was a hesitation, a slight shift in his breathing. "Look, I know we weren't always close." I laughed, the sound cutting through the night air. "Not close? You never once defended me when they mocked me. You never stood up for me when they dismissed my dreams. You enjoyed it. You thrived in it." "That's not fair," he said quickly, irritation creeping into his voice. "I was just going along with them." "Exactly," I said. "You went along with them because it benefited you. Because you were their golden child. And now that the tables have turned, you expect me to forget all of it?" His tone hardened. "So what? You're just going to let me fail?" "I'm going to let you experience what I did." Silence. And in that silence, I could hear what he wouldn't say. Panic. He had never been on this side of things before. He had never been the one struggling, the one dismissed, the one looking up at someone else in power. He had always been above me. And now, he was the one looking for a handout, and I wasn't giving him one. "Fine," he finally muttered, his voice tight. "I see how it is." "No," I corrected. "You finally see how it is." I ended the call before he could say another word. The fallout came faster than I expected. My parents, despite their best efforts, could no longer shield my brother from reality. Without my financial support, he was forced to face the world on his own terms. He struggled to find another corporate job. His experience was hollow, his skills overestimated, his work ethic weak from years of coasting on favoritism. The desperation set in. He moved back in with my parents. The same parents who had once paraded him around as their greatest achievement now whispered behind closed doors about his failures, about how he wasn't supposed to be the one struggling. I didn't reach out. I didn't check in. I let them sit in the mess they had created, let them feel the weight of every choice they had made. But just when I thought it was over, the final twist of the knife came. It was my aunt again, the same woman who had revealed to me that my parents had never wanted me to succeed. She called one evening, her voice hesitant. "There's something else you need to know." I frowned, setting my coffee down. "What now?" She hesitated. "You always wondered why they favored him over you, why they never believed in you, why they never saw you the way they saw him." I stayed silent, my grip tightening around my glass. She took a deep breath. "Because he's not really your full brother." The world tilted slightly. "What?" "He has a different father," she said, her voice softer now. "Your mother had an affair before she married your dad. He never knew. But deep down, she always felt guilty. She overcompensated. She built him up so much because she felt she had to. And you were just the shadow of that guilt." I sat back, my mind racing, pieces clicking into place like a puzzle I'd never known was unfinished. It made sense. All of it. The favoritism, the blind adoration, the way they had treated me as an afterthought, an inconvenience, while he had been their golden child. It had never been about me failing. It had always been about him winning. And now the truth was laid bare. I didn't confront them. I didn't need to. I had spent my whole life trying to earn something that had never been real in the first place. And now that I knew the truth, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. I was free. I didn't owe them anything. Not loyalty, not forgiveness, not a place in my success. My business, my empire, my future, it was mine. Built without them. Built despite them. So when my mother called one last time, her voice trembling with something between regret and desperation, I let it go to voicemail. She left a message. "Honey, please, we need to talk. Your brother, he's not doing well. We're not doing well. We were wrong. We should have believed in you. Please, just call me back." I listened to the message twice. Then I deleted it. And I walked away from them. Completely, permanently, without looking back. They had made their choices. Now, they would live with them. My parents made me sleep in the garage while my brother got a luxury bedroom. Now they want to move in with me. Growing up, I learned my place in the family early. It wasn't something that was told to me in words, not outright. It was in the way my parents looked at me compared to my brother. It was in the way my existence felt like an afterthought, a loose thread in the tapestry of their perfect little world. My brother, Ryan, was their golden child, the center of their universe. He had a bedroom that looked like something out of a magazine, spacious, filled with expensive furniture, a brand new gaming setup, and a queen-sized bed with silk sheets that my mother ironed every weekend. His closet was filled with designer clothes before he was old enough to understand what the word designer even meant. He was their pride, their joy, their perfect son. And then there was me, the extra, the inconvenience. I was given the garage. Not a basement, not a cramped spare room. The garage. 4 cold concrete walls with a thin mattress in the corner. No insulation. No real privacy. Just a flickering light bulb overhead and the constant, suffocating stench of oil and gasoline from my father's tools. In the winter, I shivered beneath a pile of thin blankets, my breath coming out in foggy clouds as I tried to sleep. In the summer, the air turned thick and suffocating, the heat pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. I was 7 the first time I asked why. "Ryan needs his space," my mother had said, as if that explained everything. I didn't argue. Not then. Because I still believed that if I was good enough, if I worked hard enough, if I just proved myself, maybe one day I would earn a place inside the house. A real room. A bed that didn't creak every time I shifted. A door that actually locked. That day never came. Ryan flourished. He was showered with praise for the smallest accomplishments. A participation trophy from soccer? My father beamed with pride, taking him out for ice cream. A B on a test? My mother kissed his forehead and told him he was brilliant. I, on the other hand, learned to stop expecting anything. Straight A's? A shrug. Winning first place in the science fair? That's nice, honey. Can you take the trash out? Every achievement, every success, every attempt to be seen was met with indifference. And yet, when I turned 16, my parents suddenly had expectations of me. "Ryan needs a car," my father had said over dinner one night. "You should get a job to help out." Ryan needed a car. Not me. Not the one who had been saving up whatever scraps I could from babysitting and mowing lawns, hoping to one day buy something second-hand just to get away. And yet I obeyed, because that's what I had been conditioned to do. I got a job at a local diner, working late into the night while Ryan slept comfortably in his luxury bedroom. Every paycheck was handed over without question. I told myself that this was temporary, that one day I would leave, and when I did, I would never look back. That day came sooner than I expected. The moment I turned 18, I left. No long goodbyes, no dramatic arguments, just a duffel bag, a bus ticket, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I would never have to spend another night in that freezing, suffocating garage. I put myself through college. It wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs, barely slept, and survived off instant ramen and cheap coffee for years. But I did it. And when I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, there was no one in the crowd cheering for me, no parents waiting to hug me, no family dinner to celebrate. I was alone. But that was okay, because I had made it. And over the years, I built something for myself. A career, a home, a life that wasn't dictated by their approval or lack thereof. I had friends who felt more like family than my real one ever did. I had stability, security, freedom. For years, I told myself that was enough. And then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message that sent a chill down my spine. "Mom, we need to talk." I almost ignored it. I had no reason to respond. But something in me, some deep-rooted instinct from years of obedience, made me hesitate. And that hesitation was all it took for my past to come crashing back into my present. I met them at a small diner near my house. The moment I walked in, I saw them sitting in a booth near the window. My mother wringing her hands, my father staring blankly at the table. They looked different, weaker, smaller, as if the years had worn them down, drained them of the power they once held over me. Ryan wasn't there. That was my first clue that something had gone terribly wrong. I slid into the seat across from them, crossing my arms. "What do you want?" My mother looked up, her eyes already glistening with unshed tears. "Honey, we need your help." I said nothing, just waited. My father sighed, rubbing his face. "We lost the house." I felt nothing, not sympathy, not anger, just nothing. Things haven't been easy," my mother continued, her voice trembling. "Ryan, well, he's been having some trouble." I raised an eyebrow. Trouble. The same Ryan who had been given everything, who had never known hardship a single day in his life. "He left," my father muttered. "Disappeared when things got bad. Won't answer our calls." A bitter laugh bubbled up in my throat. Of course he did. The golden child had finally learned that being doted on didn't prepare you for real life. And now, they were here, sitting across from the child they had neglected, the one they had shoved into a garage and expected to be grateful. Asking for help. I leaned back against the booth, tilting my head. "So, let me get this straight. You spent my entire childhood treating me like I was disposable. You made it clear that Ryan was your priority. And now, after all these years, after everything, you expect me to just take you in?" My mother flinched. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Silence. I could see it in their eyes. The dawning realization that the power dynamic had shifted. That for the first time, I was the one in control. It would have been so easy to tell them no, to stand up, walk away, and leave them to fend for themselves the way they had left me. But part of me wanted something else. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, justice. I tapped my fingers against the table, considering. "You want a place to stay?" My mother nodded eagerly. "Just until we get back on our feet." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Fine," I said. "You can stay with me." Hope flashed across their faces. "But," I continued, "you'll be sleeping in the garage." The color drained from my mother's face. My father's mouth fell open slightly. "The garage?" my mother whispered. I shrugged. "Well, that's what you gave me, isn't it? You told me to be grateful. So, I'm sure you'll manage." The silence that stretched between us was thick and suffocating, but I reveled in it. For once, my parents had nothing to say. No quick retort, no guilt-tripping words to manipulate me into submission. They just sat there, staring at me like they didn't recognize the person in front of them. Like they had expected the same obedient, desperate for approval child they had molded all those years ago. But that child was long gone. My mother was the first to recover. Her lips parted slightly, her voice trembling with barely restrained disbelief. You can't be serious." I lifted my cup of coffee, taking a slow sip, savoring the bitterness on my tongue before setting it back down with a soft clink. "Oh, I'm absolutely serious." My father scoffed, shaking his head. "Don't be ridiculous. We can't stay in a garage." I let out a low, humorless chuckle. "Why not?" I did. For years. Surely, if it was good enough for me, it should be good enough for you. My mother's fingers clutched at the cheap silverware on the table, her knuckles turning white. It's different. How? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her mind scrambling for an excuse that didn't exist. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Let's be honest, Mom. Dad. You never saw me as your child, not really. I was a convenience when you needed me. A burden when you didn't. Ryan was your world and I was... What? The extra? The spare? The one who could be shoved aside whenever it suited you? I tilted my head slightly, watching the way my words pierced through their facade. And now, you expect me to save you? My father's jaw clenched, the muscles twitching in frustration. He had never been good at hiding his emotions when things didn't go his way. My mother, on the other hand, was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to spin a situation, how to twist words into weapons and turn them against the person she was trying to control. And right now, I could see her gears turning. "Honey," she said softly, her tone dipping into something almost gentle, almost maternal. "I know we weren't perfect parents." I snorted. Understatement of the century. But we're still family. That word, family. They always used it when they wanted something, when they needed to remind me of some unspoken obligation I was supposed to feel. I had no doubt that if the situation were reversed, if I were the one struggling, homeless, desperate, they wouldn't have even let me through the front door. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Funny how family only seems to matter when you're the ones who need something. My father exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. "Enough of this!" His voice was low, clipped, an attempt at regaining some semblance of control. "You made your point. Now quit being petty and help your damn parents." "Petty?" I repeated, arching an eyebrow. "You think this is petty?" He glared at me, the same glare he used to give me when I was a child, when I was supposed to shrink under his authority. But I wasn't a child anymore. I didn't have to shrink. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my keys, dangling them between my fingers. "Fine," I said casually. "Like I said, you can stay in the garage." My mother inhaled sharply, shaking her head. "No, we can't live like that." I shrugged. "I did. You told me to be grateful, so be grateful." My father's nostrils flared, his fists clenching on the table. I could see the anger building, the sheer disbelief that I was the one calling the shots now, that I held the power they had wielded over me for years. "Or," I continued, stuffing the keys back into my pocket, "you can find somewhere else to go. Your choice." Silence. They both just sat there, the weight of my words sinking in. They were the ones without options. The car ride back to my house was unbearably quiet. I had expected more resistance, more arguing, but they had resigned themselves to the inevitable. There was no pleading, no last-minute attempts to negotiate better conditions. Maybe they thought that once they were inside, they could wear me down, soften me up. They didn't realize that version of me had died years ago. When we pulled up to my house, I saw my mother's eyes light up slightly, as if she had expected something grand. I had done well for myself, better than they had ever imagined I would, but I hadn't bought a mansion. It was a modest, well-maintained home, a place that felt like a home, something I had never truly had growing up. And in the back, detached from the main house, was the garage. I parked the car and stepped out, walking toward the side door of the garage, unlocking it and pushing it open. The air inside was musty, filled with the scent of old concrete and dust. I had never used the space for anything except storage, but tonight it would serve its purpose. I turned to face them, watching as my mother hesitated before stepping inside. She looked around, taking in the bare walls, the lack of furniture, the absence of warmth. My father followed, his jaw tightening as he took in the bleak reality of their new living situation. "You can sleep here," I said simply. "I'll bring some blankets." My mother turned to me, eyes wide, pleading. "Please, honey." "No." The word was final. Sharp. Absolute. She swallowed, her lower lip trembling. "Just for a few nights? Then we can come inside?" I stared at her for a long moment before smiling. "No." My father exhaled harshly, shaking his head. "I can't believe this." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. Believe it. They had spent years teaching me that I wasn't worthy of a real place in the house. that I was lesser, that I was disposable. Now, they would learn what it felt like to be the ones left out. I turned away without another word, stepping back toward the main house. The sound of my mother's muffled sobs followed me, but I didn't stop. The first night in the garage must have been unbearable for them. The temperatures had dropped significantly, and without proper insulation, the cold seeped through the concrete walls, sinking into the bones like a slow, cruel punishment. I could imagine them shivering, curling under the thin blankets I had tossed their way, without an ounce of sympathy. For years, I had endured this exact misery while they slept soundly in warmth and comfort, completely indifferent to my suffering. Now, it was their turn. I slept peacefully that night, wrapped in the comfort of my own bed, unbothered by their discomfort. No longer was I the child waiting for approval, waiting for a scrap of love that would never come. They had lost their hold over me, and I knew it. By the time I emerged from my house the next morning, they were already awake. My father stood near the garage door, rubbing his hands together for warmth, his expression lined with exhaustion and irritation. My mother sat on a pile of old storage boxes, wrapped in the blanket I had given her, her face pale and drawn. She looked up at me as I approached, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Desperation, regret, or perhaps just disbelief that this was real, that I hadn't relented, that I hadn't let them inside. But I wouldn't. I had nothing left to give. "Breakfast is in the kitchen," I said casually, leaning against the doorframe. For a moment, hope flickered in my mother's eyes, but it vanished the second I added, "The gas station kitchen down the street. You'll have to walk." She blinked, stunned, while my father scowled. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, stepping forward. "You've made your point. Enough of this childish game. Let us in." I tilted my head, amusement flickering through me. "Childish?" I echoed. "No, I'd say this is fair." "You're punishing us," my mother whispered. I crouched slightly so that we were eye level. "No, I'm teaching you what it feels like to be tossed aside, teaching you how it feels to be the one left out in the cold, forgotten, and ignored." A long silence stretched between us. Then, my father scoffed, turning away as if this conversation was beneath him. My mother hesitated before lowering her gaze, swallowing whatever argument she had been about to make. Because they both knew the truth. They had nothing. No house, no money, no golden sun to fall back on. And the only person who could save them was the one they had spent years treating like an afterthought. For the next few days, I watched them struggle. They stayed in the garage because they had no choice, but every morning my mother tried to soften me up. She cooked meals in my kitchen, pretending like we were a normal family. She made small talk, asked about my job, tried to reminisce about good times that had never actually existed. I ignored it, because I knew what she was doing. She thought if she played nice, if she smiled enough, I would let them back inside. That the good little son they had trained me to be would resurface, and I'd fold. I never did. And my father? He didn't bother with the act. He barely spoke to me unless it was to complain. The garage was too cold. The blankets weren't enough. The food I allowed them to buy with what little money they had wasn't good enough. He expected me to feel guilty, to cave under his bitterness. But I didn't. Because every shiver, every grumble, every inconvenience was just a fraction of what I had suffered at their hands. One evening, after I returned from work, I found my father sitting on the porch steps, his face tense with barely contained frustration. My mother stood nearby, wringing her hands, her lips pressed into a tight line. "We need to talk," my father said. I sighed, stepping past him to unlock the door. "If you're about to ask me to let you inside, save your breath." My mother placed a hand on my arm, her touch cold, frail. "Please," she whispered. "Just listen." I hesitated but didn't shake her off. "Ryan reached out," my father admitted begrudgingly. "He's willing to take us in." I stilled. For a moment I almost laughed. Of course he had reached out now. Not when they first lost the house. Not when they were truly desperate. But now, when they had suffered just enough to want an escape, just enough to break, Ryan had finally come through. But I wasn't surprised, because Ryan, just like them, had never known true suffering. My mother's grip tightened slightly. He said we can stay with him, but she hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. He wants money. I blinked. What? He won't take us in unless we pay him, my father admitted, his teeth grinding together. He wants rent. He says he doesn't have space for freeloaders. And suddenly I understood. Ryan had been raised to expect the best of everything, to be pampered and spoiled, and given a life of luxury. But when our parents had lost everything, so had he. And unlike me, Ryan had never learned how to survive without them, which meant he wasn't helping them out of kindness. He was helping them because he needed their money, except they had no money. And that's why they were here now, standing in front of me with wary expressions and tired eyes, because they didn't just need a place to stay. They needed me to pay for them to stay with Ryan. I took a slow, deep breath, letting the weight of their audacity sink in. Then I let out a low, humorless laugh. So, let me get this straight, I said, shaking my head. You're telling me that Ryan, the golden child, your favorite, won't take you in unless you pay him? Neither of them responded. And now you want me to give you the money to go live with him? Still, silence. I scoffed. You two really don't get it, do you? I took a step back, my voice calm but sharp. All these years, you thought Ryan was the one you could count on, the one who would always be there for you. You made your choice. You put everything you had into him. And now, when you need him the most, he's charging you rent. My mother flinched, but I wasn't finished. You abandoned me in that garage. You told me to be grateful for scraps while he got everything. And now, when your precious son has turned his back on you, you come to me? I took a deep breath, leveling them with a cold stare. No. That one word shattered everything. My father stiffened, his jaw twitching. My mother looked at me like she didn't recognize me at all. No, she repeated, as if she had misheard. No, I said again, firmer this time. You made your bed. Now lie in it. I stepped inside my house, closing the door behind me. I didn't look back. I never saw them again after that. I heard through a distant relative that they had struggled for a while, hopping between cheap motels, relying on whatever little money they had left. Eventually, they made their way to Ryan, and, predictably, he bled them dry. When their money ran out, he threw them out, just like they had thrown me away all those years ago. Poetic, really. I never felt guilty, not once, because in the end, they had simply reaped what they had sown. And I finally got to live my life free from them. The child they had ignored, forgotten, and mistreated had won.